The fortress of Blackridge rose out of the mountains like something carved by anger itself. Its walls were black stone, its gates were iron, and its halls smelled faintly of smoke even when nothing burned. Lyra Bennett had heard 100 stories about the man who ruled it, and every single one of them ended the same way: stay away from the Beast King. She was 24 years old, a healer trained by her grandmother, and she had come to Blackridge not because she wanted to, but because her pack needed her to. The war between the Bennett territory and the Thornwood Kingdom had dragged on for 3 years, and it had taken almost everything. Farms burned, families broken. Her own brother had come home with a wound that never fully closed. Someone had to try to end it, and the elders had chosen her to carry their offer of peace. "You will not speak to him directly," the guard told her as she stepped through the gates. His voice was flat, like he had said this line many times before. "You will wait in the West Hall. The king does not receive visitors during the full moon." "When will he receive me?" "When he is ready." Lyra did not like waiting. She had never been good at it. But she nodded, and let herself be led to a stone room with a single window, where she sat for 2 days, doing nothing but watching the moon grow rounder in the sky. On the third night, the negotiations that had taken weeks to arrange fell apart in an instant. A messenger burst into the hall, his face pale, his hands shaking. "There's been an attack at the border. Thornwood soldiers are saying our people started it. If someone doesn't speak to the king now, the truce is finished before it begins." "Then let me speak to him," Lyra said. The messenger shook his head. "No one goes near him tonight. Not even his own advisors. Tonight is when he is most dangerous. And if I wait until morning, there may be no truce left to save." She did not wait for permission. She had never been the kind of person who waited for permission when something mattered. She walked past the guards at the West Hall, ignored their shouted warnings, and made her way through the dark corridors of Blackridge toward the one place everyone had told her never to go: the king's private chamber, deep beneath the fortress, where he locked himself away every full moon so that no one else would have to see what he became. The door was heavy oak bound in iron. She pushed it open with both hands. Inside, the room was dim, lit only by a few candles that had burned low, and in the center of it, chained to the stone floor by his own command, was Cade Thornwood. He was on his knees, his shoulders shaking, his breath coming in ragged gasps that did not sound entirely human. His eyes, when they lifted to find her in the doorway, glowed gold in the candlelight, wild and unfocused, caught somewhere between the man he was and the creature his blood demanded he become. Every instinct told her to run. Every story she had ever heard told her that this was the moment the Beast King tore apart anyone foolish enough to stand before him unprotected. Instead, something else happened. Cade went still, his breath slowed. The gold in his eyes did not fade, but it steadied, like a storm suddenly finding its center. He inhaled once, deeply, and the sound that came out of him was not a growl. It was her name, or something close to it, a word shaped by a throat not fully human, but unmistakable in its meaning. "You should not be here," he said, his voice rough and low. "There's been an attack at the border," Lyra said, standing very still, the way her grandmother had taught her to stand before frightened animals. "People think it means the peace talks are already dead. I came to ask you to send word that they're not, that you still want this truce. I could hurt you." His hands, still chained, curled into fists against the stone. "Right now, I am not entirely myself. You need to leave. You haven't hurt me. I don't know how long that will last." But even as he said it, he did not look away from her, and something in his expression had changed. The wildness in his eyes was still there, but it was no longer aimed at her. It was aimed inward, at himself, at the effort of holding on. "My mate," he murmured, so quietly she almost didn't hear it. "Stay safe." She did not understand what the words meant. Not fully. Not that night. She only knew that they were not a threat. They were something closer to a plea. She stayed at the doorway until his breathing calmed, and the gold in his eyes dimmed back into ordinary brown. When the guards finally found her there in the morning, pale and exhausted, but unharmed, no one could quite believe it. The Beast King had never let anyone stay in that room during the full moon before, and yet here she was. Over the following weeks, Lyra remained at Blackridge to help finish the peace negotiations. She told herself it was only because her pack needed the truce secured properly, in writing, with every detail agreed upon. She told herself the reason she kept finding excuses to walk past the king's study, or to linger in the hall when he passed, had nothing to do with the way he had looked at her that night. She was not very convincing, even to herself. Cade, for his part, seemed just as unsettled by her presence as she was by his. He was nothing like the monster the stories described. He was quiet, thoughtful, careful with his words, in a way that suggested he had learned, painfully, what happened when he was not. He listened more than he spoke. When he did speak, it was usually to ask her opinion on something, as though her judgment mattered to him in a way that surprised them both. "Why did you stay that night?" he asked her one evening, as they walked along the fortress wall overlooking the valley. "Everyone else runs. You didn't seem like something to run from," she said. "You seemed like someone in pain." He was quiet for a long moment. "The moon makes the wolf stronger than the man. Most of the time, I can hold the balance. But something has been wrong lately. The change has been getting harder to control, not easier. My advisors think I am simply growing more dangerous with age. I am not so sure. What do you think it is?" "I don't know yet, but I intend to find out." Lyra found herself drawn into the mystery alongside him, partly because her training as a healer made her curious about anything affecting a body's balance, and partly because she could not stand the thought of him suffering without trying to help. She began quietly studying the herbs and incense burned in his chamber during the full moon, the ones meant to calm him, passed down through generations of Thornwood healers. What she found troubled her. The moonflower incense, the very thing meant to ease his transformation, had been altered. Someone had added a second herb to the blend, one that, in small amounts, was harmless, but in larger doses, was known to inflame a wolf's instincts rather than calm them. It was subtle enough that no one would notice unless they were looking closely, and cruel enough that its effects would look exactly like the king simply losing control of his own nature. Someone inside Blackridge was trying to make Cade seem more dangerous than he was. Who would do this? Cade asked, staring at the sample she had brought him, his jaw tight with a fury she had not seen in him before. "I don't know yet," Lyra admitted, "but whoever it is benefits from the war continuing. If the truce collapses, and you're blamed for being too unstable to rule, someone else stands to gain power. We need to find out who has access to the incense before the next full moon." They worked together in secret over the following days, comparing supply records, questioning the small number of people trusted with preparing the king's private chamber. Slowly, a pattern emerged, pointing toward Sir Aldrich, one of Cade's most senior advisors, a man who had served the Thornwood family for over a decade, and who had grown increasingly vocal about ending the war on more aggressive terms. "He was there when my father died," Cade said quietly, when Lyra showed him the evidence. "I trusted him without question." "I know this is hard to hear." "It's not hard to hear. It's hard to accept that someone I trusted for so long would risk destroying everything my family built, just to keep a war burning for his own gain." He looked at her, something steady and certain settling into his expression. "But I believe you, and we will stop him before the next full moon." They did not stop him in time. 2 nights before the full moon, Aldrich discovered they were closing in on him, and he made his move early, flooding Cade's private chamber with a dose of the tainted incense strong enough to overwhelm him completely, timed deliberately so that both delegations, Bennett and Thornwood, would be gathered nearby for the final signing of the truce. If Cade lost control in front of witnesses from both sides, the peace agreement would collapse instantly, and no one would ever trust him to lead again. Lyra heard the commotion from the West Hall, guards shouting that the king's chamber had been sealed early, that something was wrong. She did not hesitate. She grabbed the antidote she had been quietly preparing for days, just in case, and ran. Inside the chamber, the air was thick with the corrupted incense, and Cade was already deep in the grip of the transformation, his chains straining against the stone floor, his eyes burning gold with none of the steadiness she had seen in him before. This was not the man fighting to hold on to himself. This was the wolf, fully unleashed, with almost nothing left to anchor it. "Cade," she said, stepping closer despite every instinct screaming at her to stay back. It's me. Come back to me. He did not seem to hear her at first, his massive form straining against the chains, a low, dangerous growl building in his chest. She pressed forward anyway, close enough now that if the chains gave way, there would be no time to escape. She was not afraid. She realized this clearly, standing there in the smoke and candlelight. She was not afraid of him. She trusted him, completely, even now, even like this. "Stay safe," she said softly, echoing the words he had once whispered to her. "That's what you told me. Now let me tell you the same thing. Stay safe, Cade. Come back." Something in her voice reached him where nothing else could. His head turned toward her, and for one long, terrible moment, she did not know whether the man or the wolf had won. Then his breathing slowed. The gold in his eyes flickered, steadied, and slowly began to fade. She moved quickly then, administering the antidote she had prepared, clearing the tainted smoke from the air, staying close, and speaking gently, until the transformation reversed itself, and Cade knelt on the stone floor once more, himself again, exhausted but whole. "You came back," she whispered. "You brought me back," he corrected, his voice hoarse. "You always do." When the doors finally opened, and both delegations rushed in, expecting disaster, they found instead a king in control of himself, and a healer standing steadily at his side, holding proof of exactly who had tried to destroy the peace they had all worked so hard to build. Aldrich was exposed before the full court that same night, his plot laid bare, his ambitions ended. The truce, rather than collapsing, was signed within the week, stronger than anyone had believed possible, because both sides had witnessed firsthand that their king was not a danger to be feared, but a man who had fought, with everything in him, to protect the people around him. Months later, when Cade stood before his court and formally claimed Lyra as his mate and future queen, he did not need to explain to anyone why. Everyone who had watched the two of them together already understood. That night, as the two packs celebrated together for the first time in years, Cade found Lyra alone on the fortress wall, looking out over a valley that no longer echoed with the sounds of war. "My mate," he said softly, drawing her close. "Stay safe." She smiled, leaning into him, feeling the warmth of a promise finally kept. "I intend to, but only if you stay right here beside me." "Always," he said. "I promise you, always." And for the first time in 3 long years, the mountains around Blackridge were quiet, not with fear, but with peace.